so much for joining us tonight. Before we begin, I just wanted to set kind of the tone, and what we're going to be doing is taking you on a journey of where we have been since August and taking a look at our curriculum programming and at the same time of the professional development that has occurred. But before any of that happens, I just want to say that if there are individual questions about your child with regard to reading, we're happy to answer those questions, but the purpose of tonight's presentation is more so to talk about the process, our journey, and where we're headed next. But before that, I introduced Dr. Gail Lovette. I want to take the time to say thank you. We had more than 35 staff members assist us in this process. So I just want to give a big shout out to Teresa Burgeon, Brian Boucher, Michelle Berman, Tara Carroll, Martin Conley, Aaron Curran, Ashley D'Angelo, Kristen DeMarco, Julia Democassis, Rebecca DeLeo, Daryl Dorian, Sita Dervasa, Patricia English Sands, Irene Farmer, Karen Grover, Brendan Hoare, Shannon Janovitz, Karen Kim, John Lyons, Alexia McCauley, Nicole McDonald, Tim McMahon, Heidi Mendelson, Nicole McDonald, Sean Musselman, Bonnie Nichols, Kelly Nolte, Melissa Parnell, Amy Prosky, Nicole Ray, Aaron Riley, David Rosenblatt, Margaret Smith, Patricia Sullivan, Alyssa Torsia, and Allison Varnell. All of these folks were with us for many meetings, and they were assigned homework to take a look at the curriculum processes and the curriculum books that we have before you. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over. Yes, at this point in time, what I'd like to do is introduce to you, we're going to go over the literacy assessment updates like I talked to you about, the literacy task force process, and to tell you where we are with our two final options. And at this point in time, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Bonnie Nichols, who is our interim K-8 literacy coordinator.
Hello there, my name is Bonnie Nichols, and I am grateful for this opportunity to share a little bit about myself and to talk about my very favorite subject, structured literacy. I'm in my 18th year in public education, and I was exceptionally fortunate to have worked at the Children's Dyslexia Center, which sparked my enthusiasm for structured literacy when I first began my teaching career. I am also the mom of 3 children, and I am passionate about coaching unified basketball, about coaching the Burlington Youth Soccer Association travel soccer, and just started last week Rookie League basketball. So if I'm not here in this building, I'm at one of the gyms.
Hello, I am Gail Lovette. For those of you I have not met, translation, sorry, I'm keeping microphones going here. First, I wanted to thank you for inviting me to Burlington during your monsoon season. Lovely. I've had to change my shoes twice today already. I live in Charlottesville, Virginia. I have been so fortunate and privileged to get to know many of the teachers and educators that are in the room, and to get to work with Eric, Lisa, and Bonnie around literacy. Very quickly, my background is as a teacher, so I started as a 3rd grade teacher, I was a 5th grade teacher, I was an elementary administrator, I was a middle school administrator. I have my PhD in reading from the University of Virginia, where we moved from Washington, D.C. and wound up staying. I also wear the lens as a parent now to all of the work that I do, and you'll see my son right there. He receives special education services, and as a reading specialist, twist to the heart here, he really, really struggles with reading and writing. And so I bring that special education parent lens to everything now. I am an assistant professor at the University of Virginia. I am faculty in the doctorate program in curriculum and instruction, where I work with doctoral students around evidence-based instruction, assessment, and curriculum, but the very favorite thing that I've done so far in the last 5 years is during the 21-22 school year, I left UVA for a year and went back into a local public elementary school as a reading specialist. That was to help with COVID recovery. You'll see my colleagues or my teacher besties up there for all of the teachers in the room. We worked for a year to really work on the literacy of all of our students who had just come out of half of a year of no school and then a year of virtual school. So a lot of the hats and lenses that I bring to this work really are reflected in all of these experiences. Okay, so the science of reading. How many of you have heard this term before? Oh yeah, it's a big one, right? Have any of you listened to Sold a Story? Oh yeah, excellent. That's been the one podcast I can get my non-educator friends to listen to, and then they call me really fired up. So the science of reading is really a very rich, established evidence base around how we know students develop their reading skills and the best ways to inform reading instruction and writing instruction. Sometimes there are myths around the science of reading, and so I thought it was really important to sort of myth bust those a little bit. So the science of reading isn't just one program. Science of reading is not like a one-size-fits-all approach. It's not a fad, so I've heard that a lot. It is a very, very well-established research base. So everything that we've done here in Burlington has been under the umbrella of science of reading. And I will say that when I started my work with Burlington, there were many, many, many aspects of the science of reading that were evident and apparent in the classrooms that I visited. So that's not always the case with some of the districts that I work with. So kudos and hats off to the BPS educators. Here you go.
I'm thrilled to be able to talk about the exciting work of our literacy task force. First, I want to echo Lisa's sentiment in thanking our committee members, our talented reading specialists, and all of the incredible Burlington Public School educators and administrators for their commitment to structured literacy and to supporting all students. I also want to thank Dr. Conti and Dr. Chen for their inspiring vision and leadership. So all of the work that we've been doing for the Literacy Task Force has been grounded in this core belief statement. We believe that every Burlington Public student has the right to learn to read. We believe that every Burlington Public student deserves to learn to read, and we believe that every Burlington Public student wants to learn to read. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about how we learn to read and how reading develops. So this is Scarborough's reading rope. It shows the complex process of what is happening in our brains as we're beginning to learn to read.
The simple view of reading tells us that word recognition times language comprehension equals reading comprehension. Scarborough's reading rope elaborates on the complex process of what is happening in our brains as we're learning to read. The rope illustrates how skilled reading relies on the intertwining of language comprehension and word recognition. Each strand, like phonological awareness, decoding, vocabulary, and background knowledge, works together, gradually strengthening to create fluent and meaningful reading. Research also shows us that curriculum rich in core knowledge improves reading outcomes and background, and deep content enables students to comprehend complex text. All of the curricula reviewed by the committee are thoughtfully sequenced and knowledge-building core programs. In the 1930s, Dr. Samuel Orton and Anna Gillingham created a method to help readers by explicitly teaching the connections between letters and sounds. The method was phonics-based, systematic, explicit, highly structured, and multisensory, and known as the Orton-Gillingham method. Over time, educators and academic researchers have built upon this method to develop what is known today as structured literacy. Structured literacy is explicit, sequential, systematic, prescriptive, diagnostic, and cumulative, and benefits all learners. All of the foundational skills programs that have been considered utilize structured literacy principles and provide explicit, systematic, and sequential instruction in phonics. Both Ed Reports and DESE's supported high-quality instructional materials require these principles to be present.
And this particular Pillars of Reading is very close to my heart because English was not my first language. And it took me about 7 years to learn how to speak right and just to articulate English well to the point that people can understand what I was saying. And so one of the things that we take a look at when we're looking at these programs is also ensuring that these programs address all of our students, including our students who are multilingual learners. Now, one of the great things of looking through these programs is that it also involves like the professional development that we're going to be looking at, because these programs alone, it's just a piece of it. What is going to sustain the programs that we're going to maybe take a look at is not only the professional development, but how it's implemented. And so there's going to be a lot of strength when we take a look at the phonological awareness and the phonics. That's very much a part of teaching someone how to be able to grasp and learn English.
Okay, so we were talking about professional development. As you saw in the slide about structured literacy, teacher expertise is really important in teaching students to read. So one of the professional development programs that I've recommended is LETTERS, which you'll see that acronym and what that stands for. I am not affiliated with LETTERS at all. I have completed LETTERS because I've been curious about it. I think it provides a rich background for educators to really understand how reading and literacy skills develop. All of the components of these pillars of reading that you saw are addressed within LETTERS so that Burlington Public Schools educators who are already so knowledgeable are able to then take their foundational knowledge and build on that.
And so the vision for that really is to take a look at, starting next year, of working with our pre-K teachers, our teachers in the BECC, and getting the LETTERS training. And then that letter training will then move on from year to year for all of our K1 and 2 teachers, including our reading specialists, our L teachers, and also our special education teachers. So we have a very strong background when it comes to understanding what it is about the science of reading so we can apply the appropriate approaches for all of our students.
So we've been talking a lot about reading, but writing is just as important. In fact, writing is one of the most cognitively demanding tasks that you can do. So writing and reading are intricately connected. Decades and decades, and I see some literacy task force people who have heard me say this, decades of research have shown that writing and grammar instruction must be embedded within a deep content knowledge building curriculum and related to what you're reading. So I'll give you a second to read the slide. So when you read a text and then you write about a text, it is far better than all those other things than for your reading comprehension than just reading or rereading a text. And we know that writing and reading are so connected. So all of the curricular programs that we considered in the Literacy Task Force embed grammar, embed writing, and embed into the reading curriculum. They are not separate, standalone programs because we know that is not only really great for reading comprehension, but also the most effective way to teach writing. And so for the rest of tonight, you'll hear us say the term ELA quite a bit, and that is EduSpeak, or educator lingo for English language arts. And that is an umbrella term for all things related to literacy. So we're talking about reading, writing, spelling, and listening. And then that leads me to this multi-year focus on literacy that I've had the privilege to work with Burlington Public Schools on. So there is an overall focus, preschool all the way up to grade 12. And you'll see that last year, the focus was on getting to know every educator. I was in and out of classrooms for a full week. It was terrific. And then that led to the creation of a literacy report that contained several recommendations, 9 of them. Tonight we'll focus on 2 of those. And the first recommendation was around the streamlining of screening assessments. And the reason we're talking to you about that is as parents and caregivers, your child has or will be given a screening assessment in reading. So the reason we screen in reading is to identify students at risk. And the reason we want to identify students who are at risk is what we refer to in the literacy world as the Matthew effect. And that is a biblical reference, which I'll explain in a second. But as you can see, if my cursor is showing up for you, it is. When we can identify students who are at risk, the earlier we can identify that risk, so if we're talking about kindergarten, first grade, and if we can provide targeted supports for those students, you'll see that the gap between where we want students to be and where they are is really small. But as we get out into grade levels, we know that the gap, if we're not able to identify reading difficulties and also support where those reading difficulties are, that gap by 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, you'll see gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so that is the Matthew effect. The kids who are fluent readers are going to keep reading, and they're going to build that really rich, complex vocabulary. They're going to get all that exposure to sentence structure. And the kids who are really struggling with reading aren't reading. And so we talk about it as the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. And that's what the Matthew effect means. It is one of those foundational learnings within the literacy field. And so one way to make sure that we don't have the Matthew effect is through the implementation of a multi-tiered system of supports. And you'll see that we start with universal screening for all kids. And Burlington Public Schools does that with 2 assessments, Dibbles 8 and iReady. And the goals of these screenings, and what we know that the research shows, is that at least 80% of students are getting what they need to meet end-of-year grade level benchmarks in Tier 1. And when we're talking about Tier 1, because it's a multi-tiered system of supports, Tier 1 is referring to that core grade level classroom instruction. So that's the instruction that all students deserve and are entitled to and are receiving. We also know that there is about 15% of students who, even with that effective core grade level instruction, will need some strategic intervention, and this could just be reinforcement of grade level phonics skills. It could be more practice applying that knowledge in text, more practice reading and rereading grade level texts. We refer to that as Tier 2, as that need for strategic intervention. And the research also shows that even with effective core grade level instruction, there are about 5% of students who are going to require intensive intervention in addition to grade level instruction to really address reading needs. So one way, go ahead.
One of the things that I wanted to say is that the Literacy Task Force, as we were looking through our curriculum, we were also looking at ways to ensure that there were techniques in there and also strategies in there to provide students with the scaffolding necessary to address some of our Tier 2, some of our students who are needing Tier 2 strategies in Tier 3. And the programs that we looked at were encompassing, and they also were inclusive of providing teachers with some of these strategies.
Excellent, thank you. For our students who are in need of some additional support, we want to be progress monitoring. We want to be making sure that they are receiving and responding to that support. And so Dibbles 8 is a tool that you can use as a screener, as a universal screener, but it's also a tool that you can use for progress monitoring. And my husband is in chemical engineering, so he is so far outside of education and teacher speak. So when he comes to parent conferences, you know, he's like, I have no idea what they just said. It can be an alphabet soup. So I really wanted to provide a quick sort of framework for the different types of assessments, because there can be some confusion. Why do we give a screener? Why are we giving this assessment in addition to it? So our screeners are used to measure reading risk. So when we're talking about DIBELS 8, we're talking about iReady. Those are measuring reading risk in relation to grade level benchmarks. Those are different than diagnostic assessments that we would give to a student. Sometimes we will follow a screening tool with a diagnostic, because a diagnostic will tell you which specific skills the student needs more practice in or more reinforcement in. So when we're talking about DIBELS 8 tonight, those are meant to be a screening tool. iReady are a screening tool. A teacher is not going to be able to look at it and say, oh, short E, blends, digraphs. So it's meant to give us a sort of quick snapshot, sort of like in the medical field when you go for a screening and then you go for additional testing in that way. And then progress monitoring, like I said, DIBELS 8 are used for progress monitoring, and that's just to determine if the students are learning the skills we want them to learn in relation to our grade level benchmarks.
And that's why I would say that we began this process of just ensuring that we're all speaking the same language, and that's why we had, it was about 167 staff that we trained, all elementary staff, all reading specialists, all ESL teachers, all special education teachers, our speech pathologist, in DIBELS 8, and we're very lucky to have Dr. Gail Lovette, who is one of the founding trainers when it came to the University of Oregon, when it came to the DIBELS training, and thank you, and also Sean was part of that training as well too. And then you had to earn your, you had to pass a test, and if you passed a test, only had to take it twice, then you could become an official person who could then be able to give these sub-tests. And I found this to be a really, really great training for all of our staff to go through. It was about 6 hours. And then tomorrow we're going to be training all of our middle school staff, and we're going to be training some of our high school staff as well too, because the goal really is in year 25, 26, which is the following year, to be asking also our middle school English teachers to be taking a look at giving a 1-minute ORF assessment, which is your oral reading fluency, since your oral reading fluency is a wonderful predictor when it comes to reading comprehension. So that is just another way to make sure that we are catching all of our students. And again, this is going to be with putting in a very solid core curriculum, but implementing in a way with fidelity. It is a multi-year process, and at the same time providing folks with the professional development, beginning with pre-K with letters, because if we gave both professional development and implementation, I would have a tomato sandwich, just because it's too much for people all at once. But it is very exciting. We've talked to Deborah Clark about this. She's very excited to get the letters training. It's about a 12 hours training. This will really make our pre-K staff even stronger, moving it up to K, 1 and 2. We want to create that very, very solid foundation and to ensure that all of us are speaking the same language when it comes to using also DIBELS 8. Thank you.
You're welcome. Some very quick, go ahead.
Did all of the professionals that took the training pass the DIBELS 8 test?
Yes, for the most part, and if not, some of them were absent. And some of them, like me, will have to do just a little bit, but yes, they're on the way of yes. Yes.
I'm a tough examiner. So really what the test is about is being a reliable administrator. You want to ensure that you're giving the test the same way every time to every student. So we practiced all day, and then we watched videos, and they scored. And everybody in the room, even if Dr. Chen needed to do it twice, I'm looking at folks, and I do know that they all received certificates. So that's awesome. So very quickly, some more information about DIBELS so you know what it is, because it's just an odd sounding word. But it stands for the Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. It will become a verb among educators. We're like, we need to go dibble today. Or I'll ask, like, have you dibbled my son lately? But I was trained in it in 2019. DIBELS have been around for decades, so you may have even been dibbled yourself as a student. It is incredibly, incredibly well researched. This 8th edition was the revision and updating in the 8th edition was funded through the IES, which is the Institute of Educational Sciences, so from the Department of Ed through the University of Oregon. It's an open resource, so I want to be very clear that I don't receive any commission for any type of DIBELS, anything in that way. But I have used and implemented DIBELS, and I was one of, like Lisa said, a few people invited to become a trainer of DIBELS. So it was awesome. I got to be a part of the validation studies. I also got to give feedback as both an administrator and also a parent in that. Like I said, I use DIBELS in my own practice. They are validated, they're based deeply in research, and actually DESE rates them as fully meeting expectations for that regulation around early literacy screening. What I love most as an educator about DIBELS is that it measures automaticity. So each subtest is 1 minute, and that's it. What you'll see, and I'll give you a second to sort of read through the slides, it'll look a little bit like alphabet soup again. But these are all of the subtests, and then you'll see in the colored boxes, that is the total amount of time it takes to administer individually to one student.
And I want to segue here. This is why sometimes when some of the parents have received the reports from their students, you don't see all of the DIBEL assessments, because there's certainly only some subtests that are given.
And everybody who received a certificate is a valid and reliable administrator of all the DIBELS subtests. So kudos for them if they teach 5th grade, because in a screening situation, they're not going to give some of these subtests. But like Lisa said, different subtests are given in different grades depending on the skills that are developing in literacy for students. So a letter naming task is given in kindergarten. It's not going to be given in 3rd grade because the shift is away from learning letters and letter sounds. The reason it is so short is that it measures automaticity. So when we are automatic with a skill, when we don't have to think about it, it just comes to us. Like if I shouted out 3 times 3, what are you all going to say? 9. Nobody had to think about it. So when we're automatic with our literacy skills, even with our numeracy skills, that frees up so much cognitive capacity in our brains to understand what we're reading, to make meaning from what we're reading. And that is the goal of reading. Many of us have read something way outside our fields where we have to stop to decode every word. And by the time you get to the end of the paragraph, you cannot remember what you were even reading about. So DIBELS are going to measure automaticity, which is why they are so fast. Are you automatic with these foundational skills? And then you're going to compare scores against what is known as a benchmark score. So some of you got a report, there was a benchmark score on it. A benchmark score gives the educators within that grade level, within that school, a common language, even within the district. So benchmark scores are unique to grade levels. So all 2nd grade students have 2nd grade benchmarks. All 3rd grade students are working towards 3rd grade benchmarks. It's made up of 3 points of time, beginning, middle, end of year. And the benchmark score will change depending on the point of time in the year, because the understanding is with that core grade level instruction, these skills are going to become more automatic and our students are going to continue to grow in that area. And what I want you to know about the DIBELS scores, the benchmark scores, is that they are telling you the likelihood of your student meeting grade level expectations at the end of the year. They're a measure of risk. They're not a determinant, they're not a diagnostic, they're a measure of risk. And so when I say grade level, the probability of a student meeting grade level at the end of the year, what that means is that when they validated DIBELS with thousands and thousands of kids, they gave the DIBELS assessments, and then at the end of the year, they gave a completely separate standardized test called the Iowa Test of Total Reading. And that's given across the nation, and it's standardized among kids who are the same age. And so when we talk about grade level, what we're talking about is all of the students who received that benchmark at the end of the year in the validation studies also scored at the 40th percentile or higher on the Iowa test of total reading against all the other kids that age and that grade who had taken it. So your DIBEL scores are going to tell you if they're meeting that benchmark. It means that they're likely, with a greater than 80% chance, that with continued effective core grade level instruction, they'll be reading at grade level, or if they were to take the Iowa, they'd be at the 40th percentile or higher compared to same age peers. So that is what that is telling you. It's a measure of risk. It's not a determinant, but it'll tell you how much risk the student is experiencing. And based on the extensive validation studies for the DIBELS 8, there are some subtests that are more predictive of overall risk than others within that grade level. So I've listed them here. I'll give you a second to read it. So you'll see boy, moi. What does that mean? So boy means beginning of year. Moi stands for middle of year. EOI stands for end of year, which is hard to make into a word. So remember that this means it's the likelihood of meeting grade level benchmarks with that continued effective core grade level instruction. And you'll see that the most predictive subtests at the very beginning in early education vary based on grade level and the time of year. So Lisa referred to an A+ teacher's pet, the oral reading fluency subtest. That is our powerhouse subtest. That 1 minute subtest is most predictive of reading risk from the middle of your first grade all the way through the end of your 8th grade. And that's because we know oral reading fluency is very highly correlated to reading comprehension. So imagine having a 1 minute powerhouse in your hands that you can just listen to a student read within 1 minute and have an idea of the amount of reading risk that student is experiencing. So that's a quick snapshot about DIBELS. iReady is also given within BPS. It is a computer adaptive assessment. Students take that individually through their iPads.
And then I share just to piggyback on what Dr. Lovette is saying is that one of the things that we're wanting to do is to have lots of good, solid longitudinal data so we can talk about it. So we have students who are getting the DIBELS, and they're also getting iReady too at the same time. And so both of these two pieces of data points, and again I say they are data points because they're also formative assessments as well too, are just really helpful for us in taking a look at the progress of what our students are making. And so it's another professional development that all our teachers will be receiving on January 2nd, both the elementary teachers and also our middle and secondary teachers who use iReady will be taking a look at looking at the reports, looking at the student data, because really it's establishing that common language so that when you're looking at a report, you have an understanding of what and how best to help your student progress along.
So this assessment, the iReady, students take independently. You'll see that, like DIBELS, there are different subtests given within the grade level. So some are given in early childhood because that is when, in the early elementary grades, because that is when teachers are really focusing on phonological awareness. And you'll see it's not given as a screening in 3rd through 8th grade. So another thing to note is that it measures silent comprehension. So unlike DIBELS, where we're listening to a student read, the students are working independently, and it is a good measure of silent comprehension starting in 2nd grade. In 1st grade, it's a measure of listening comprehension because we would not expect 1st graders to be fluent and able to also focus all of their energy on reading comprehension. So we talk about DIBELS as more of an expressive skill where we're asking the students to read to us, and then the iReady is more of an independent sort of receptive skill. So we're measuring how students are doing on their own independently. And these two measures together can work together really well because DIBELs are 1 minute and they are a measure of reading risk, but they're not a determinant. So we can use our DIBELs and our iReady to confirm results or to question results. We can say our student was really strong in reading comprehension on iReady, did not do so great on oral reading fluency, could be just an off day, worthwhile to assess the student in oral reading fluency again, or vice versa. So it gives us really good information for making data-informed decisions around our students. And then that brings us to our focus on year 2, which is the formation of the Literacy Leadership Task Force. That was done to address one of the main recommendations around that Tier 1, that core grade level instruction, which was to adopt a comprehensive K-8 ELA curriculum. And so the main focus of the Literacy Leadership Task Force, and I see many members here as well, was to deeply investigate ELA curricular programs and to consider them for adoption and implementation. An important piece to know is that a program is a piece of a larger curriculum. So Burlington Public Schools has incredibly dedicated, incredibly engaged teachers. I was blown away by that when I came. It's one of the first findings in my report. There is a wealth of experience, of commitment to students within the Burlington education community. And so it's really about building on that shared collective knowledge and efficacy through the implementation of what we call in education high-quality curricular materials. So it allows all of the teachers to share a common language, to share goals, to have a purposefully and thoughtfully sequenced scope, both in foundational skills, but so we're thinking about like that word recognition rope here, but also with the deep knowledge building that we know students need. And so the use and implementation of an ELA curricular program as a part of the overall curriculum allows for alignment from K-8. And as Bonnie mentioned, all of the curricular programs, which I'll talk about here in a second, address both sides of the rope, or both strands of the rope, that deep content knowledge and language comprehension with vocabulary, but also that word recognition, because that structured literacy piece is so important for our students to continue to receive. So in the formation of the Literacy Leadership Task Force, we utilize a curriculum program selection process that was adapted from EdReports. I'll talk about what EdReports is in a second. But you'll see that our first stop was to sort of establish the process, come together around shared goals. So we built on those core values and we looked at the shared goal. I'll give you, I don't want to do PowerPoint karaoke, so I'll give you a second to read it. Kind of hard to argue with that, right? But that was our shared goal. We also, as a group, were bringing such diverse perspective, experiences. We had 8th grade ELA teacher and a kindergarten teacher together, and so it was important that we came together to form some norms about how our group was going to function and operate. And we wanted to ensure that everyone was engaged in our collective work, that everybody had a voice in our work together, that we honored opinions and experiences of our entire group together. So you'll see we've worked hard. We have met regularly since September. We still have a few more meetings ahead of us, but we're really excited to be at this point all together. And you know, like Lisa said, it's a group of 30 to 35 individuals coming together with a shared goal, and that's pretty special. So I love having the opportunity to facilitate that work. The next thing we wanted to do together was to develop our lens. So one thing that our entire task force did was listen to the Knowledge Matters podcast. So if you haven't listened to that as a parent, it is amazing. And it really builds the why behind having a content knowledge building curriculum, in addition to making sure we have all principles of structured literacy there together. So highly recommend that. But we also decided what we were going to look at to really evaluate our curricula. So one of the tools we used is EdReports. EdReports is a nonpartisan nonprofit that uses educator-led teams to develop rubrics and evidence guides for high-quality instructional materials. They allow publishers to also respond if they find that there are aspects that are missing. All of the reports are released. They're open access. You could look at them right now. For any of the curricula they've reviewed, they're free. They're accessible. And one of the pieces to fully meet expectations if you have a foundational skills curriculum in literacy is the incorporation, the full incorporation of principles of structured literacy. So those are there. We also looked at Curate reports, which are written by Massachusetts educators for Massachusetts educators. And Curate panels review only comprehensive core curricular programs that have already been found by EdReports to fully meet expectations.
And then I do want to give a shout out too at the
Same time, and I just really want to thank Sean Musselman. He had spent thank you. He had spent countless hours of also looking at this from a science and social studies lens to make sure that the two curricular programs that we're looking at are going to be theme-based and they're going to be aligned with the curriculum that we study at the science and the social studies level here in Massachusetts. At the same time, I really appreciate the equity lens that he took. He looked at, for instance, how many characters were male, females. He also took a look at the different races. Are they representative of the stories that we're reading? How many of them were nonfiction, fiction versus nonfiction? How many of them reflected the multiple religions that are in the Burlington community, because we are such a rich community of many different languages. And so that particular lens, looking at it from an equity lens, was extremely powerful, and really appreciate the time that you took to pull all that analysis together. It was the third lens that is probably the most important lens, because it represents the population of our students here. So thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. Sean did that all on his own. He voluntold himself right into it, but it was such important and amazing work. So that led us to the next step, which was to deeply look through our options. So we looked at 4 different curricular programs. I am not affiliated with any of them. I recommended them because I have, for exploration, not for adoption, but just for exploration, because I have worked with districts who have successfully implemented all 4 of these. 3 of them are implemented pretty widely in Massachusetts as well. All of the ones that we looked at have a pretty extensive and firm research base, and they are comprehensive. So they're implementing both those foundational skills, and they build deep content knowledge. One thing to know about all of the curricula is that the main focus in terms of the reading aspect of it is grade level texts. And so they provide support and scaffolds to teachers so that all students are accessing grade level text, so that they're getting that wide exposure to text at that grade level. So in order to do this work, it was a big task. We formed some subcommittees for review teams. They got to pick and rank which ones they wanted to review, so we tried to honor that for them. They spent time really going deeply into each of the curricular programs. They were experts, and when we came back together as a task force on those programs, we had them complete feedback on all aspects of the program? Are they aligned to DESE frameworks? Are the teacher materials accessible and easily navigated? Because that is also very important. What areas do you think will need more support in terms of implementation? And so we collected all of that feedback. And in our December 5th meeting, we came together to review all the feedback we had received on all of them. And really, I wasn't sure. No, it was not predetermined which curricula we were going to narrow to, but it was really based on rich, deep discussions, what the feedback was. We met with all of the representatives for each of the curricula. We sent questions, they sent answers. We sent more questions, they sent answers. They came, they visited, they talked to us, and we narrowed it down to these two. Yes?
I also want, can you go back to that other slide with all those people on there?
Oh, yes.
One thing that I want to point out to you is that every single principal in the elementary school has been deeply involved in these curriculum choices, and I'm really proud of them, because one of the things we said to them is that, guess what? We can make the decision up here, but guess what? If your guys going to implement it, you're going to have to know it. You're going to have to breathe it. This is going to be something that your staff are going to want to be involved in. So really kudos and a shout out really for each of the 4 elementary principals, because they also spent countless hours taking a look at the curriculum, making sure that their staff had access to them. And so I really wanted you guys to be aware as parents that the principals have really been invested since the beginning of ensuring that we find the best core curriculum for our students.
Thank you, Lisa. That's an important note. So where we've landed is Amplify CKLA, which is a K-5 3rd edition. So we'll talk about that in a second, along with Amplify ELA for grades 6 through 8. And then the other option, and it's really kind of split right down the middle where everybody's first choice is Wit and Wisdom, K-8 with really great reading. And so I'll talk through these very quickly. And then we have reps here, and we have the programs here. So as families, we want you to also deeply explore and give us your feedback. So Amplify offers, it's a comprehensive K-8 curricular program that is built with 2 components. The CKLA K-5 is the 3rd edition, the one we're looking at. They are revising, we'll watch a quick video about it in a second here. They are revising in the 3rd edition, so schools that are implementing it right now are implementing the 2nd edition. What you'll hear when you go out and talk to Tracy, the rep, is that the 3rd edition takes all the feedback from all of the educators and the families and only improves it. So my husband joked, I had an iPhone 7. I just got an iPhone 16. I'm like, whoa, mind blown. But it has all of the things I loved about my iPhone 7. So it's that same sort of iteration and taking of feedback. There are many districts in Massachusetts, according to DESE, that are implementing this, K-8, or they're implementing K-5 and 6-8. So one of the goals is for our task force and our teachers broadly and educators to have an opportunity to talk to folks who are implementing it in other places.
And so as part of the structure too, a next step is we're going to take a look at some of these schools. We're going to set up some times and appointments to go look at some of these schools in which the implementation process has already occurred and really ask the really tough questions, such as how long did it take you guys to implement? What did it feel like? How did it look like? How did you roll it out? Did you roll it out step by step? How much time was taking for the professional development? Because part of the process is also to ensure that it fits well within our culture here at Burlington Public Schools, and that also that our students and teachers, and particularly the teachers and families, they know what's going on, but the teachers receive the core professional development that is aligned to it. Because, again, I want to say this is a multi-year process. So our next step is once we get a hold of this, we're going to really take a look and go visit these schools, some of these schools.
So, thank you. The Wit and Wisdom is a K-8 knowledge building curricula that they have worked together with Really Great Reading, which provides that sort of core foundational skills, K-3, but also provides intervention all the way up through 12th grade. They've worked to align together, so it is two programs, but the alignment piece to create a comprehensive K through 8 ELA curricular program has been done, and it's been very thoughtful, very purposeful. So you'll have both Really Great Reading and Wit and Wisdom out there. They've got materials. You walked right by them when you came in. And these are the school districts within Massachusetts that are implementing Wit and Wisdom according to DESE. So that leads us to where we are now. So another part of this process is to get wide stakeholder feedback. We have shared both of the curricular programs with all of the faculty at all 4 elementary schools and the middle school. The reps for each program are going to be visiting schools and talking with the educators, and they'll be answering questions. Like Lisa said, there are plans to contact other districts and ask them really tough questions. We're gathering their feedback, so BPS faculty and educators at large, all of that feedback. But you are also important stakeholders in this, and so we really value and want your feedback. So our next steps are for you to explore these 2 options that we have for programs. And to go through them deeply. There will be paper copies of them to look through at each elementary school, and also
in the instructional team office as well too. And then later tomorrow you'll receive a parent square with a lot of this information, and also at the same time you'll receive the PowerPoint presentation as well too. And you'll also receive a survey. And we ask, please, because your feedback is so important, and we are in the process. Nothing has been determined yet. Your feedback is incredibly important, so we need to hear your responses. So please, please complete the family surveys by January 21st. We're going to gather all of this information. Oh, goodness.
We'll send Dr. Conti.
Yeah. That information will then allow us to make a recommendation for the school committee in February.
Another thing you'll have access to in this Parent Square letter is online resources. Looks like everything's okay. All right, online resources so that you don't have to go to the school. For both program options, there are translations available, so there are family-geared websites that you'll be able to look at that offer home connections. Our final step in this task force is to recommend, gather all the feedback, go through it, and ultimately recommend 1 to move forward to present to school committee, where we have 2 of our members here this evening, not 3, because that would be a quorum, but 2 are here this evening. So they would recommend a K-8 curricular program. I will run out and get our reps, or Bonnie, will you run out and get the reps? This is a picture if you have questions. Here is the information.
Yes, if you have any questions, please feel free to either reach out to me or reach out to Dr. Bonnie Nichols. Again, each of the copies, the hard copies, are in each of the schools. They're also in the instructional office. And there's also a website dedicated to the free online resources, so you can play in the sandbox, take a look at it, so that you'll really have the best information possible to help us with this particular survey.
Okay, so our Amplify sent us a video, 2 videos, one about they're very short, K-5, and one about 6-8 that I'll show you. It's going to be involved in the technology, but I will get it. I have to go over and then, am I there? Am I there? Oh, I'm there. Okay, so I'll play the CKLA K-5 one first. Then we'll watch the Amplify ELA one, and then we have our Really Great Reading and Wit and Wisdom folks who also wanted to do a quick presentation, and then you can go out and put your hands on all of it. So I'll start this.
Hello, I'm Susan Lambert, and I'm so excited to introduce you to the 3rd edition of Amplify Core Knowledge Language Arts. This new 3rd edition builds on the proven instructional approach of previous editions of CKLA and provides you and your students with better than ever support for teaching and learning. We've made significant improvements to the areas you told us mattered most. In 3rd edition, you'll find bolstered writing instruction, more opportunities and support to reach all learners, streamlined pacing, and more authentic literature. And yes, full-color teacher guides. The science of reading tells us that skilled reading requires both language comprehension and word recognition. In Amplify CKLA, students in kindergarten through 2nd grade complete 2 60-minute lessons each day. One lesson focuses on phonics and word recognition, while the other lesson broadens their knowledge base across science, social studies, and the arts. In grades 3 through 5, students continue to build their knowledge base and refine their literacy skills through integrated, content-rich units of instruction. With Amplify CKLA 3rd edition, your daily instruction also follows the science of writing. To foster confident and skilled writers, CKLA instruction systematically develops transcription skills as well as writing composition skills. In CKLA, transcription skills begin with pre-writing strokes in kindergarten and progress through cursive in grades 3, 4, and 5. To support students' writing composition, writing is embedded in daily instruction. This integrated approach to systematically teaching writing while systematically building knowledge ensures that students' activities reinforce what they've learned. Students will learn to write while they write to learn, creating compelling writers and confident communicators in the process. At Amplify, we're committed to bringing the world into your classroom while honoring the experiences your students bring with them. That's why we've created a brand new knowledge sequence. Your students will encounter new people and perspectives, plus more authentic texts in new and exciting units. They will soar to new heights with Dr. Ellen Ochoa, Amelia Earhart, and the Tuskegee Airmen. They will feel the rhythm as they learn about jazz legends Miles Davis, Tito Puente, and Duke Ellington. And they'll explore the far reaches of the world with Jacques Cousteau, Matthew Henson, and Eugenie Clark. The science of reading is for everyone, and while not every student enters your classroom with the same level of preparation, we know that every student deserves the opportunity to become a confident reader, writer, and thinker. Together, let's write the next chapter of the science of reading.
Video as well. And then there is a quick, I love this one because it has the middle school students.
My favorite part of Amplify was probably when we did Red Scarf Girl. I love history. The part where it tells us to get in groups with classes and have us partner up.
I like interacting with my peers because everybody has their own opinion.
I enjoyed the Cask of Amontillado the most because it was more interactive and it helped me with writing.
With Amplify, it has a text with it so you can cite evidence, you could copy and paste, you can do all these good things that other stuff can't.
It's useful for multiple things. One of the main reasons is helping me understand words, to expand my vocabulary and exercise our vocabulary.
I liked the library because it has cool books.
I like to read about mystery, how you can figure out things and use examples for things that they say, basically putting a puzzle together.
Yeah, it's made me more patient with explaining my work more than just writing about it.
It helped me with citing evidence more than I usually did.
It's more engaging because it's more fun to read it. You become a better reader when you have someone to talk to and kind of read to and engage with.
Pretty great to hear middle school students talk about reading in that way. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to introduce Whitney and Sam, and they're here to talk to us about the other exciting options. So you'll need, this is for translation, and I'm going to drop this thing. Yep, you can actually talk into that microphone. And then your slides are right here. You just hit next. You can just hit that button. All right. You'll have to get to this. That's just for translation. There you go.
Technology. I'm sorry. I know it's a lot, so I'll try to be nice and quick so you can get your hands on some things. This thing, what do I do with it? Just talk. I'm talking into here. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, we're good.
Does this work now?
Yes.
Yeah, much better.
Whoever decided to give me a microphone was just not, it was just, probably don't do that next time. Sorry to you guys. So hopefully you've learned a lot today about the science of reading and about how Burlington Public Schools is going to make a lovely shift for your students, for your learners, and your kids. So we are both very excited to be here to present a little more about Wit and Wisdom, really great reading, and GEODs. And before we get started, I'd like just a quick moment to introduce myself. My name is Whitney Harding, and I'm the Account Solutions Manager here at Great Minds. I have worked with Great Minds for almost 2 years at this point, and prior to my time working with Great Minds, I was a teacher in Worcester Public Schools for 10 years. Do you have a mic as well? If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Sam. Sure. Do you need that? There you go.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Yes, we are. So my name is Sam Carbonetti. I work with Really Great Reading. Before I joined Really Great Reading, I was a middle school teacher in northern Vermont, taught 6th through 8 humanities. I'm looking forward to chatting with you now about Really Great Reading in just a minute.
We're going to invite some contestants up here in a minute, so get prepared for this. So we're going to start by looking in a little bit more detail at Wit and Wisdom, and then we're going to talk about GEODs for a little bit, and then we're going to talk about really great reading. I just want to ground us today in, did we miss a slide? Oh, JK, we're going back for a minute. I know that you guys looked earlier at Scarborough's reading rope, and so I just want to ground our presentation to show you how these two curriculum together meet the needs of Scarborough's rope to create skilled readers. So what you'll see up there is that Wit and Wisdom is going to work very well at the language comprehension portion of Scarborough's reading rope. And at the bottom, you'll see where Really Great Reading is, which is going to help your students with their word recognition portion. In the middle, what you'll see here is that we have GEODs, which are going to thread the rope as it provides students an opportunity to learn to read while they are reading to learn. Now, as we look at Wit and Wisdom with a little bit more detail, we're going to talk about how it stands apart. To begin, I'm going to show you this visual, which is a bunch of gears on a page. I like to think about it as the integrated approach of literacy as an orchestra. So these are all working together to create a melody within the classroom where your students are going to learn all about literacy. Now I begin talking about knowledge and text, which I like to think as the conductor of our literacy orchestra. Specific to Wit and Wisdom is the fact that we believe as a company that knowledge building is necessary for your students. So while some of our competitors will teach knowledge in many, many different topics throughout the entire year, we will use one topic for 8 to 10 weeks so that your students are learning all about that topic. This is a selection of a few of the core texts that you will see with Wit and Wisdom. You might notice up here, as most of the teachers I present to do, so maybe as parents you'll see this as well, these are sometimes books that you already have at home. We've selected core texts that you are either familiar with or your teachers are familiar with as well. We've also made sure to include both nonfiction and fiction and a variety of genres, alongside ensuring that we have opportunity for your students to learn about various cultures. I'm going to show you a year of what Wit and Wisdom will look like in first grade. So students are going to start out learning about a world of books. They will then learn about creature features, then the powerful forces of the wind, and my favorite thing about this module is that students learn about the powerful force of the wind, and then they learn about the powerful force of their feelings and relate that to how characters respond to those changes in the wind. And last but not least, students are learning all about Cinderella stories, and as they are told by different cultures across the world. Do we have any first grade teachers in the audience? I think so, maybe. Cinderella stories are usually the ones that they're like, this is awesome. Okay, we already do that. All right, and when we think about geodes and how geodes are related, we call them readable texts, which means that your students are going to practice what they're learning with Wit and Wisdom in terms of their knowledge build. So you can see at the top here in first grade, students are going to work on a world of books, then creature features, then a powerful forces, and then learn about Cinderella stories at the end, alongside being able to practice their explicit foundational reading instruction. So this is how we align to not just knowledge building, but also to really great reading. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into third grade. So what you'll see here is that your third grade students are going to learn across the year about the sea, outer space, a new home, so all about immigrants and their stories coming to the US. And then last but not least, they'll learn about how artists make art. Every single Wit and Wisdom module is started and ended through a lens of inquiry. The lens of inquiry is going to provide a sticking point for your students. And for instance, in this third grade module, students are going to learn all about why people explore the sea. Now, we know that that's a massive abstract question for your students and for your kids, which is why we break this down into more meaningful chunks. So students will begin this module learning about how artists explore the sea. You might be wondering, how exactly is my student going to build this knowledge? Well, you can see up here all the way on the right, students are going to start out this module by reading The Sea Wind. It's a poem that they will use, and they're actually going to illustrate a picture of what they depict from that poem about the sea. Then they're going to move into the three pieces of art you see at the top. The first one, the Wave of Kananagua, which they're going to use the same way they would use a text to learn all about it through an experience we call See, Think, Wonder. They will then be moving into learning about the explorers of the sea, so they'll read Jacques Cousteau, Ocean Sunlight, Amos, and Boris. And last but not least, they learn about the fascinating creatures, Shark Attack and Giant Squid, with sharks and squids. You'll also see on the left here that they are going to take a virtual tour and going to get to experience the humpback whale in this video as well. So students are learning through a variety of means. Many people ask me, what does a Wit and Wisdom classroom look like? Well, I like to say it looks like fun, because students are engaging in content the way that as an educator I knew they needed to engage in content. One of my districts that I worked in said around the whole building there was this little document that said we learn 10% of what we hear and 90% of what we're saying to other people or what we're teaching. And I think that's very evident if you walked into a Wit and Wisdom classroom. Students are engaging in these instructional routines like choral reading, echo reading, gallery walks, chalk talks, where they're getting to interact with that content, speak and learn, and you're also embedding SEL skills as well. Students are also going to participate in writing to learn and learning to write. We know based in research like the Writing Revolution that students are better at writing when they have knowledge to write about. So students are going to write to learn, where they're going to be taking the content that they're learning and using graphic organizers in some of those instructional routines like chalk talks. They're also going to be learning to write. So this means they're provided with explicit instructional craft stages where they're going to work towards one genre for every single module. What this might look like, and for example, in grade 3, module 1, at the end, students are going to do this culminating writing task where they will write a multi-paragraph essay explaining why artists or scientists explore the sea. Now you can see if students are learning about the sea the entire time and also working towards this genre of writing, why this is now going to be something that student can access. We know that Learning extends much beyond the school day, especially since I think like every single district tells me that there's not enough time anymore. I know, I was just an educator. So how can you support your students as families? We offer a variety of resources, including welcome letters, family tip sheets, and MLL glossaries in up to 14 different languages. And I am going to switch this off to Sam so he can tell you more about really great reading.
Okay. I actually got one.
Oh, look at this. All right.
I think it works. All right, so I'm going to introduce myself again. I'm Sam Carbonetti. I work with Really Great Reading. Again, before I got to Really Great Reading, I was a humanities teacher for grades 6 through 8 in northern Vermont. I taught there for 9 years. And honestly, foundational literacy was not something that was on my radar at all as a middle school teacher. My training and expertise just wasn't in that direction. So, but what I was noticing was a pretty significant problem that was going on. So I had, I saw all 6, 7, and 8. I'd get new 6th graders every year. And I was seeing over and over and over again, more than 50% of them were not even reading at a 3rd grade level. And I didn't know why. I had no idea why. They were going through their reading recovery program. They were doing their LLI leveled readers. And there was never any change. Fast forward to getting to Really Great Reading, I take a deep dive into foundational literacy. And I really start to understand kind of the root causes of that. And it was really, they were missing those key foundational skills of phonics and decoding. So with Really Great Reading, you get 19 years of science of reading experience and a passionate team of educators. A lot of folks came out of the classroom to specifically work with Really Great Reading. They had used the program in the past. And are really dedicated to solving the literacy crisis in the United States, one district at a time. So, so with that being said, like, what does a district like Burlington Public Schools get when they partner with Really Great Reading? Well, you're going to get 19 years of science of reading experience. It's going to be behind you every step of the way. You're going to get engaging, multisensory, explicit instruction. Dedicated ongoing implementation support, and that's also includes whether that's an implementation for classroom intervention or special education. The materials that teachers are using are near zero prep. They're designed to be efficient, 15 to 20 minutes a day per lesson. And it's really going to provide that equity of instruction across the district for foundational literacy skills. And ultimately, that's going to reduce long-term costs of intervention and special education because you're going to be reaching the majority of the students with that good first instruction, which is going to then free up your interventionists and special educators to be working with those students that really need that intensive intervention. All right, so how does Really Great Reading do this differently? They're going to streamline and simplify the method of teaching phonics and decoding. And they're going to do that through what they call their lose the rules approach. And basically what that means is they're not going to rely on a complex marking system that's going to tax their working memory, the student's working memory. And it's also going to delay their, by using that marking system, it's going to delay their access to multisyllabic reading. So we're going to provide an efficient scope and sequence that's going to get students reading multisyllabic words by the end of kindergarten. And we're going to be able to do that by helping them to become self-teaching engines. And that's by activating their ability to not just pull words off the page, but actually map them to their sight word memory. The fancy term for that is orthographic mapping, if you're familiar. And so ultimately, that's what we're doing. And I have, on my next slide, I have a little bit of an analogy that might be relevant to some folks in the room that have lived in the Northeast for a long time. But before I do that, I just wanted to reiterate what Whitney said about the Scarborough's rope. So again, Wit and Wisdom is specializing in that top part of the rope, the knowledge and comprehension building piece. And Really Great Reading really specializes in decoding and phonics skills, those foundational literacy skills that are essential for being able to read and comprehend text. How many people have found themselves stuck in a snowstorm without snow tires?
This is literally this week.
Yeah. I know it's raining right now, so that doesn't really apply to this, but I don't know if you're like me, but you always say, I'm going to get that appointment faster this year. I'm going to do it before the snow comes. Or maybe you're a person that says, well, I just want to buy one tire. I need to cover summer, fall, winter, and I'm good. I buy one tire. And we know all seasons tires do everything, but they don't always do everything well. And so my analogy here, if you follow the bouncing ball with me, is insert big box company here. They say they do everything. They do everything, but they don't always do everything well. It feels easier, but ultimately, the first thing that gets dropped or deprioritized with those big box programs is foundational literacy skills, decoding and phonics. So what I'm trying to say here is really great reading is the winter tires of foundational literacy. And when we're thinking about the scope and scale of the storm that we are in right now with foundational literacy across the country, but also right here in Massachusetts, you really do need a specialized solution to address that issue, to navigate that problem, and solve it at scale. And so along those lines, really great reading is constantly iterating. They're always working with the science of reading research, trying to develop the best practices for developing good foundational literacy skills in students. And we're also partnering with other organizations to make sure that we're not leaving out any component of foundational literacy, and that includes not leaving out our English language learners and our students that have oral language challenges. And so just as a final leaving with you, I just wanted to say that, like, as a parent, as a former teacher, after taking a look at all of the foundational literacy resources out there, the reason why I'm here is because this is the one that I would use in my classroom and I would use with my own kids. So I guess with that, I just wanted to say, thank you so much for the time that you've put into this and the dedication. Y'all braved the rain to be here to help your district, make the best decision they can. So I appreciate that.
And also, I figured I would state my why as well, since honestly, last night we were doing this slide deck together, and I was like, you have a good ending. I don't have a good ending. So I just needed to come back. What I had on if we can go back once, what I had on the previous slide are just two depictions. One is the cat sat on the mat, and below that is a geode text, which is a readable text. And the reason I put those up there is I work with great minds because in my school district, where I had a student come into 5th grade reading at a level A, she spent a lot of time frustrated and did not want to come in the classroom, and I can understand why. We used a guided reading approach, and when I was able to implement something that was knowledge building, like Wit and Wisdom, she turned into a whole new human. And so that is why I work with this company, and I know that every child is truly capable of greatness. So thank you for your time. These are some resources that you're welcome to scan. I know that you have everything linked up, so I will also pass this back to Lisa.
So I just really wanted to thank each and every one of you. Thank you, Dr. Conti. Thank you. Also recognize our 2 school board members here who are spending time with us tonight. Thank you so much, Megan, and also Megan Novacek, and also Chris Monaco for being here with us, and also members of our Literacy Task Force. Thank you for putting countless hours into the work that we've been doing. So as a next step, you will be receiving a Parent Square notification from me that will be tomorrow, be filled with a lot of this information that you received tonight, also the PowerPoint slides, also ways to access some of the materials so that you as family members can explore this. But as a next step, we really value your feedback. So please, please take the time to fill out that particular survey, because your feedback really does matter in helping us choose and present our final finding before school committee sometime in February. And so if you would like, at this point in time, as you exit out, we will have folks out there with CKLA, so you can take a look at CKLA and also Wit and Wisdom. I will stay behind here, and I'll also go over there to answer any specific questions that you maybe have, either about our process or about where we're going with professional development with literacy. But again, thank you so much for your time tonight. And again, we hope that this was a helpful presentation so that you could see where we are in our journey and our process. Thank you.